Okay, so
It's
let's boil this down to the 10-second clip. Are cybersecurity jobs going away because of AI? No, absolutely not. Right?
no.
Yeah.
Well,
And
not. I won't say absolutely not. Some are going to go away.
welcome back to another episode of the Cyber Guys podcast, the cybersecurity podcast for everyone. I'm Andrew Valencia, always joined by Mike Hill. And man, what you got for us today, Mike?
I'm talking about cyborgs. I'm talking about artificial intelligence. We're talking about Skynet. We're talking about the thought, the fear, the promise, the hope of leveraging artificial intelligence in cybersecurity. Some people think it's a panacea, it's going to do everything. Others think it's too expensive. Others,
Basically talking about how you and I are going to be out of a job in about 5 years, right?
that's what a lot of people think. And honestly, some jobs, like always, will always fall the way of automation. I mean, that's been the case for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. But it's not going to do all of what people think it's going to do.
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot when it comes to artificial intelligence. Basically, hey, when is Skynet coming? I'm definitely not a believer in that. And when people ask me, well, what are you going to do when they start using, AI for cybersecurity? And my response is, we've been using AI in cybersecurity for a decade and more.
And that's why it's so important to level set. Okay, when we use the term artificial intelligence or machine learning, what are we even talking about? Some immediately jump to Skynet or Data on Star Trek or something where there is human-like, even superhuman-like artificial intelligence. Robots that are smarter than people and all that sort of thing. That's the thought. That's the fear. That's the anxiety. I think it's dominated Hollywood for generations. But that's not really what artificial intelligence is. And fundamentally, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we're simply talking about the ability to uh, follow and form deductive analysis without following procedural code. In other words, the ability of a system, a computer system, to emulate thinking in the way that we understand it and then can develop systems to pattern after those. That's the concept of artificial intelligence.
It was once explained to me, and this has stuck with me. Um, but it was once explained to me as a really complicated and expensive binary decision matrix. And I think that's what it just kind of boils down to in its simplest terms. It's a lot of different decisions that go one way or the other.
Well,
And you do
that,
that and
but
build
that's
on that
true.
enough.
Yeah, but that's true of all computer systems. All programming is based on
Exactly.
Boolean
Exactly.
logic.
Yeah.
So what are we saying is different between artificial intelligence and um, all programming code, which is all based on binary logic?
Well,
And the distinction is this: you can arrive at a point that was not necessarily programmed in artificial intelligence systems, where in finite conventional programming, every scenario was already thought through and programmed for.
but that I think is the misnomer of artificial intelligence, because when we talk about artificial intelligence, we really are talking about deriving a set of data that wasn't already inputted into the system, right? And a lot of the quote unquote AI that's utilized in cybersecurity today is not that whatsoever. Um, Automation has been around for a very long time, and a lot of the tool sets that are out there that describe, we built our tool with AI, with artificial intelligence from the ground up. It's really just a set of automation tasks, right? That appear to be
Yeah, kind
more
of,
complex than I think that they actually are.
kind of, and this is an important distinction. There's marketing terminology, and then there's actual scientific
Yeah.
terminology. You know, you can call any computer system artificial intelligence, really. I mean, if you wanted to, for a marketing ploy, it's done. But in the actual computer science community, when we use that term, we use it synonymously with machine learning, and that is the ability of a system to develop permutations off of its core programming. Um, but and this is the thing that I always throw caution to when people think of um, real cognition in these artificial intelligence systems, and that is they're not effective at what humans can do in the way of inductive reasoning. They're just extraordinarily efficient in deductive reasoning. So anything where you have a data set where the data is in there, it's in there somewhere. It's the needle in the haystack, it's in there. Artificial intelligence will be the most efficient way of finding the needle in the haystack, of getting the correct answer out of the established data set. But when we're talking about creating new information, new knowledge, there's no model that we have that's been successful in this sort of induction. This sort of the creative spark of humanity that really distinguishes human genius. Uh, there's no model for doing that with AI. So when we apply that and think about that in terms of cybersecurity, well, what are we going to be good at? Well, vulnerability analysis, we know the vulnerabilities there. We have vulnerability logs and vulnerability databases. Artificial intelligence is going to find it, identify it, log it, help us to track it, deal with it, fix it, whatever, much more efficiently than people would. Signature-based threat detection, way faster. I just taught a class on threat hunting, and the goal of that class was to basically look at packet captures, look at processes running on systems, figure out if there are rootkits there, certain indicators of compromise that you can identify in the data. Well, humans can do this, but when humans do it, it's pretty slow. I mean, you're going through thousands of packets trying to find some abnormality, some unusual behavior, maybe some weird DNS um, uh, 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 messages or signals, strange HTTP traffic, maybe some posts going out of your network, that sort of weird thing. That sort of stuff is the stuff we're looking for. But who's going to find that faster? A person thumbing through these packet capture traces, or a computer that can actually look at it in real
Right.
time?
Yeah. Well, and that's why when people assume that artificial intelligence in cybersecurity is this kind of brand new frontier, it's kind of not, right? We've had intrusion detection systems for a very long time, and there are multiple different types. Some of them are signature based, some of them are behavioral based. We have that technology already. I think that what's really interesting though about entering into these to this kind of newer set. That's more automated, right? That's more automated in nature. What I think is very interesting going forward, though, and what gets under people's skin in our professional field a little bit, I guess, where people think, oh, by 2030 or 2035 or 2040, we're not going to have any human beings in cybersecurity, is things like machine learning. Yeah, things like machine learning, deep learning, that kind of stuff, where they can take huge data sets and make a determination on what is normal and what is not based on those data sets. I think that, however, again, that's not artificial intelligence. That really is just,
Well,
analyzing. And again, it's making
you can
something that a
use,
human can do
but you can
very slowly.
you can
It's
use artificial intelligence to do that. There's nothing wrong
100%.
in fact, in all honesty, that's probably one of the best uses of artificial intelligence in threat detection. But here's the thing. Here's the difference. When you're using that pattern and for anomaly detection, you're following what I call a retrospective perspective. In other words, the past is prologue. You have to have something in the past that is going to give you a pattern, even if it's not an exact signature match. There's a pattern that you're using your AI system to then predict behavior or predict certain indicators of compromise. But the thing is, if you're looking at a truly novel approach, I mean, what we call a zero-day attack, where someone is trying something that's never been tried before, And particularly if it doesn't follow the same form as a traditional attack, then those data sets are going to be useless. All of that record, all the analysis, all the number crunching in the world is useless. I mean, think about the kill chain. And in cybersecurity, we look at attacks in the form of a standard approach or kill chain for the sort of attacks that are done by advanced persistent threat agents. And you can predict the tools and techniques that are used because it's pretty consistent. You get in, you get a beachhead, you move laterally, you privilege escalate, and then you start actions on target. Some basic form of that. Now there are more steps in some kill chains, fewer steps in others, but that's basically the idea. Well, that's a pattern that AI could pick up on very quickly if that's the pattern that's being followed. The thing is, what if there's something new that's not in the data set? Then AI is useless
Yeah,
or less
and
useful, I
that's where
should
we
say.
are today. Of course, there are plenty of companies that are attempting to solve that specific problem right there. To analyze huge amounts of data set, determine patterns, and then predict uh, uh, what a 0-day a breach may actually look like. Um, they're out there and they are attempting to do that. But again, that's even today, that's something that we still don't have humans doing already. That's kind of already been phased out to a certain extent. I mean, you've done a lot of you've done a lot of, network penetration. What's one of the worst jobs in a network penetration team? Like lowest level, it's actually combing through like emails, right? Like phishing emails and all that kind of stuff like that. Why have that when you can have a bot go through and do that for you, right? And do it a lot
But the thing is,
quicker.
most of the good sim tools out nowadays, they do that part for you.
Right.
So that really the analyst is looking through just a filtered set. But the problem is, and this is why threat hunting is another role that is important to augment the basic SOC analyst who's just looking at stuff that the SIM tool threw up and say, hey, is this weird? Look at this. But with threat hunting, what we're basically doing is we're saying, well, let's theorize something that we don't see in the data set. Let's come up with an
Mhm.
idea of maybe another novel way of approaching it. And that's where the human part will always factor in because the bot, the AI system, even with behavioral analytics, is not necessarily going to pick up on a theory that a human can devise as a new and novel approach that they've never thought of. They're basically hunting for something that they have no reason to believe is there. That's where humans will always have a role, but it's going to require a skill set that's a little bit higher than the people that we currently have in these roles.
The skill set becomes more complicated. No doubt
Exactly.
about it. If I were speaking to a 22-year-old fresh out of college going into the field of cybersecurity to be a system administrator, I would absolutely tell them you're in the wrong game and you're going to get phased out in the next decade. 100%, because there are things that can be done that are both automated and through artificial intelligence that are going to end up doing your job. So you need to learn how to program artificial intelligence. You need to become an expert on machine learning, those kinds of things. You have to step up a bit, bef- you know, more than what we've done in the last 20
Yeah.
years.
Honestly, and you've heard me say this before, and you'll hear me say this again. I really strongly don't believe any cybersecurity job should be an entry level job. That's my personal opinion. I know I probably would rather rustle a lot of feathers by saying that, but honestly, if the role of cybersecurity is to find the mistakes of other IT experts, then you really don't want a novice in that role. That's how I feel about it. Now, I get it that not everyone agrees with me, and we'll talk about that in another podcast. But the idea of these repetitive, brainless activities being a role for humans is yes, that's going to be phased out. You don't need people doing repetitive, mindless actions. You can use robots, and it's the same thing with AI. AI is not to take over what humans do uniquely. It's to take over the redundant tasks, the simplified tasks, the follow the SOP to the letter brainlessly tasks, that sort of thing. There's no reason at some point for humans to be involved in those, because it's finite. I mean, just getting back to what I was talking about earlier. What do computer systems do well? They process information that's there. Even with the most sophisticated AI, and some may point to the fact that, hey, this AI system beat a grandmaster in chess. Yes, because a chessboard is finite. The chess pieces are finite.
All
The
the moves
moves
are already
are finite.
known. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, there's a novel combination of gambits that may or may not happen in one given thing, but eventually you could process all the possibilities, and you could develop a system that can make the best possible move in all possible scenarios and beat a human who might make a mistake in the heat of the moment. In any case, that's not the same as thinking, not in a novel inductive way, at least. Can we call
I
it
think you're
learning?
still
Sure.
going to need, at the end of the day, there is still a need for a human being to analyze the data that's produced by whatever artificial intelligence is placed. There's still someone who needs to determine not only what the information says, but also where to place that artificial intelligence in the network or in the system to begin with, right?
But also there are subjective points too. I mean, for instance, let's say your data set says that there's a certain thing that is possible, but the probability may be within your risk tolerance. See, there's a subjective aspect where the human can actually evaluate the risk, evaluate the cost benefit analysis, and then make the decision that, okay, my AI system told me all the facts that I need to make an educated decision, but I'm going to still make this decision or I'm going to make that decision. Those decisions are not ever going to be in the hands, or at least should not ever be ultimately in the hands of an AI system.
I mean, I think the degrees of separation between artificial intelligence and the management of that artificial intelligence is going to decrease and continue to decrease, right? You're going to get those values that are inputted, what the top risk tolerance is, so on and so forth. The more complicated um, and comprehensive AI and machine learning continue to become, uh, you're going to get a easier picture, or a more simpler picture rather for a someone like a management or manager or an executive to make that determination. But we are very far away from that. That's the
No,
thing, is that the variables that requires are not really there yet. And when I do get
at
asked
least
both
at least
by,
they're not affordable yet. They're
well,
there.
and
They're,
that's
they're
what I
just
mean
not
by that.
official.
I don't mean that they don't exist, because there are some very fascinating, frontier type stuff going on with Google, with IBM, what they're able to do. But whether it's scalable, whether it's affordable, again, that's a long way off. Take it back to, when we talked about, threat hunting. For an organization to implement a threat hunting team or have a threat hunting apparatus, that is extremely resource driven. It costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of people, it costs a lot of time to do that. If that can be automized, or automated rather, if that can be automated through the use of effective artificial intelligence, organizations are absolutely going to do that. And that's where you see a lot of companies right now developing, threat hunting capabilities, utilizing machine learning, utilizing massive data sets, so it can simplify and expedite this analysis for cybersecurity professionals to take a
Yeah,
look at and make determinations and decisions
absolutely. I'm,
based on.
I'm, I'm gonna tell you one area where I really want to see more use of AI uh, relative to cybersecurity is in identity management uh, and authentication. It's really interesting that people just look for the authentication mechanism as if that's the key. Big password and you're good, or let's use biometrics and we're good. But you and I worked a while in the biometrics field, and you know our most sophisticated biometric systems tend to be multimodal, which is looking at more than one thing at a time. But here's the thing: with AI being context sensitive and using um, threat awareness and maybe the integration between physical access control systems and logical access control systems, could make a determination of how much and how rigorously to authenticate at any given mechanism. In certain situations, they may want that second confirmation. In other situations, they don't. You see a little bit of that on online, but it's not really based on artificial intelligence. It's just based on a simple algorithm where the first time you log in from a given device, then they'll want a strong authentication, and then subsequently they'll do typical authentication. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about taking that to the next level, where we use predictive analytics to really nail down um, the mechanisms for being uh, more certain of identity
Yeah,
and
there's
identity
some of
knowledge.
that already in play.
Yeah, it is.
There's
It's already
neural networks that are involved in determining, biometric scanning, facial scanning, facial recognition. The Apple ID does this, where they use neural networks, and one of the major flaws is that you can actually trick the neural network. You can put background noise essentially. I'm taking this down to a 5th grade level. You can essentially take an image, put background noise in it where it's not perceptible to the human eye, but it is perceptible to a camera or to whatever device you're using to authenticate, and that image can suddenly be authenticated falsely. There's this really famous example of a panda being uh, a picture of a panda being recognized as a panda, and then by adding some imperceptible noise to the image, it's then authenticated as a bird or something to that effect. You know, those are things that are going to need to be handled not by neural networks and not by you know uh, deep learning or even machine learning, but by human beings. Human beings are going to have to determine where those tools are most effective, where they can be implemented, when they should be implemented.
And that just to kind of put on my programming hat, that is the difference between logical errors and syntactical errors. When any entry level programmer learns that if you break the rule of the programming language, that's a syntax error. It crashes your program. You got to fix that. The more difficult type of error to trace and to deal with has always been logical errors, and that's where you evaluate your code in a particular way, and true becomes false. In other words, a logical untrue becomes the reality, which ultimately means that something that the programmer didn't think of, the sequence of actions, the sequence of commands, something, whatever it may have been, something was entered into the logic that the logic was not built to handle, and therefore created a logical error. That is a problem at every scale, and it continues to be a problem even in sophisticated AI systems. If you can actually introduce something that the system was not designed to look for, not designed to anticipate, not designed to deal with, ultimately you can force an error. And that is why it cannot just be your panacea. You can't say, I'm going to buy this system. We're going to spend $100 million on this amazing system. And then we can fire all our cybersecurity people because we're now great because we have Skynet.
Right.
Well,
Right.
you know what happened with Skynet in the Terminator. It didn't go well.
Right.
And it's never going to go well. But that's not to say that as an efficiency mechanism, as an enhancement to process, as a way of eliminating humans from the error prone, redundant, repetitive sorts of behaviors, that it's not a great solution. It is. For those things, it is the future. It is the solution. And it will cost some jobs, but it won't take them all out. And it's not the silver bullet that people want it to be.
Yeah. I mean, uh, I look at these things. I tend not to get emotional about it or have an emotional response to stuff like this. And whatever study they put out where you know 35% or 40% of C-suite or executive members of organizations believe that cybersecurity will be fully automated or will be humans will be replaced by artificial intelligence in the next 10, 15 years. That's panic inducing for people who are in our field for sure. Uh, But here's the thing, it's just another tool. It is another tool in the toolkit of a cybersecurity professional, whatever their job may be, whether it's network penetration or whether it's governance or or even threat hunting. It's just another tool to be utilized, and this job you have to to evolve. At
Yeah,
100%.
and
Any
that's the
job you
thing.
have in technology, you have to
That's
evolve
the
with the tools.
that's the thing. If you think that your job is going to continue to exist when all you do is follow the step by step of some standard operating procedure, where you're just going through, and checking boxes and executing checklists and doing every time the exact same checks. If that's your job, yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean,
But
even then, I just looking at the landscape and especially a lot of the clients you and I have worked with, I even then I don't think that the folks that are very comfortable in that role, I don't know that they're going anywhere in the next 10 years.
no,
I
no,
do think
10
that
years
they're,
is too soon. But
I think that
eventually,
they are.
eventually,
Y Yeah, there's definitely a niche, whether it be, governmental, organizations or just kind of like even Fortune 500 companies where, there are people who are very, very settled. They're C-suite or executive members who are very comfortable with the way things currently are and are not gonna wanna switch over. We've seen that with just trying to enhance
and
cybersecurity,
and
best
and
practices
honestly,
throughout
and
multiple
honestly,
organizations.
yeah, and honestly, with some of the customers that you and I have dealt with, they do try to make things that shouldn't be put into a step-by-step checklist or standard operating procedure. They try to force everything into a one-size-fits-all solution, and really, that's the mistake.
If there's any
Just
argument for
They shouldn't be doing
replacing
that at all.
yeah, if there's any argument for replacing, humans in cybersecurity with AI, it's that handicap right there, that
Yeah,
need to put something in a rigid framework and to follow step-by-step instructions to implement good, sound cybersecurity practices.
it
That's
doesn't really work like that.
that's
That's a bad idea.
it's a bad idea. I do think
You have
that
to.
there's a lot of good with artificial intelligence. It's going to be an enhancement. It's not going to take over cybersecurity. However, right? And I'd be remiss if we didn't just like punch this in at the end of the episode here. But there's a lot of drawbacks to relying on artificial intelligence, and we joked about Skynet this and Skynet that, and again, I don't think we're going to be seeing you know the machines rising up to blow us all up or anything close to even that. But I think there's real digital privacy concerns when it comes to the over reliance of artificial intelligence with machine learning. I mean, the at at the introductory level, what do you need for AI to be effective?
Oh,
You
so you have a
need
problem with
data.
Alexa listening to you 24/7?
Well, you need data, right? You need data. The artificial intelligence needs data. And the wider reaching that data is, the more likely it is that it's going to start, stepping on the toes of privacy. It already has. Google's
Yeah,
doing that, Amazon's doing it.
yeah, it is.
The only reason why
Alexa
these AI the
Alexa is
AI
watching
uh,
instead of
Alexa's
Big
always
Brother.
listening and
It's
always
yeah,
watching.
yeah.
And
Instead of Big Brother is watching, Alexa is listening.
yeah, and that's the thing is it's something that I believe Google already knows. The bigger companies, IBM already know this. Artificial intelligence is not something where it's not a Pandora's box, right? That's just waiting to be opened where we lose control of everything. It's a tool to be used. And Google knows this. It's a tool to be used. They are casting wider and wider nets and getting more specific information for, for their consumers to feel the convenience factor, right, where our searches are more accurate, where even my email is is combed through to a certain extent. It's something that in the near future that scares me more than, oh my goodness, my job's going to go away because some deep learning model is all of a sudden be able to predict cyber attack
Yeah.
you know
I tell you, Andrew, what we need to do. I have some guys some buddies that actually are involved in AI research, machine learning research. Maybe we'll get them on the show and revisit
yeah,
this topic in the future,
I think that
and get an insider scientist perspective on it, and
there's a really,
maybe
really interesting conversation to be had around the use of these types of tools, right? And how it's going to affect our lives, not just in the industry as cybersecurity professionals, not even that, which I think you and I are both on the same page for. But how does that affect our private lives, right? How does that affect our you know digital selves? Or do we have a right to digital privacy? Some would argue no. I mean, so I think that's a good
It's something to
conversation to have.
analyze. It's a
Yeah,
conversation to have. No doubt. Interesting stuff.
it's
But
good stuff.
we don't have to worry about Skynet
Okay,
yet.
so let's
No
so
time
let's
soon.
let's boil this down to the 10-second clip. Are cybersecurity jobs going away because of AI? No, absolutely not. Right?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
And
not. I won't say absolutely not. Some are going to go away.
no,
Uh,
but it's the same
no,
as it's always been, right?
we,
Look, when they
yeah,
made the switch operators went away. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
you got to evolve just the same as it's always been in any
It, so,
technology
so
field.
so let's just refine that a little bit. It's
Are humans
no
okay, here we go. Are
no
humans going to be
expert,
replaced? Are humans
no
going to be
ex,
replaced by AI?
of course,
No.
but no expert level roles are going to be lost. Entry level roles, monkey see monkey do type roles, they're always the ones that go, and they're going to continue to go.
I think the next question to follow up on that is, well, then how the heck do you even get into cybersecurity? Well, you know what? Just Google or go on YouTube, search cybersecurity, and the first 10 videos you see are you do. Here's how you get into cybersecurity for free, or here's how to get into cybersecurity with no experience. Yeah, that's. There's a lot
And,
of stuff out there. We'll talk about.
and
We should
those are
talk
the
about that
jobs.
next.
Those are the jobs that I think that are going to go. Honestly,
We should talk about that at some point. Just
well, in the next
entry
episode.
level cybersecurity stuff, what matters in cybersecurity more than anything else, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's our next episode.
Yeah. Boom. There you go. You heard it here first. Our next episode, we're going to be talking about entry level cybersecurity and who should and should not be in cybersecurity.
It'll be a bit of a brawl, but I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I know you and I famously don't agree on that, but all right. Well, yeah, that's all fascinating. So AI is awful and bad, and it's all going to lead to the downfall of human society, right? That's what we're going to use at the beginning of the
Not
episode
at
to
all.
that
Computers are our friend.
computers are friends.
Computers are our friends.
That's it for us today, folks. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and always remember: be safe, be secure, be sure. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.